Welcome to the Align Life podcast by yours truly, Dr. Tiffany. How about we get out that magnifying glass and look at every part of your life, the awesome, the suck, and everything in between. There's so much beauty in you. Stop being afraid of what isn't good enough and let's double down on what is together. It's about your truth and your life, aligned.
Hey guys, I got Lyndi with me today. Whoop, whoop. She doesn't get to be behind the scenes helping me this time. She's going to be right in the driver's seat. So I am no makeup Tiff right now. We're going to talk about perfectionism. We're going to talk about all the things that hold us back from taking action, especially when that action is what totally feels right in your heart, in your gut, in your soul. I talk about it in terms of whispers and nudges, but perfectionism is, well, I can just speak a little bit of how many people blame it on perfectionism, which is just failure to start at that moment, right? Because when we need to do it perfect, we just don't even want to start because it could be imperfect and we might fail. She's going to break this down a little bit on what she noticed in herself when perfectionism popped up and popped through. And then most importantly, there's one thing to be aware of things, right? There's another to actually do something about it. So she's going to talk about that journey from, I say, recovering perfectionist. So those of you who don't know Lyndi, she is my right hand. We've been working together for 14 years, just about here, 13 and a half or 14 years. She's the yin to my yang in Cairo and now in the Align Life. And really my teammates in all things transformational. So no matter how we're working with you, she's behind the scenes allowing me to do what I do. So kudos to you. And everybody should give a little bit of a golf clap for her. It's not always easy to deal with Alpha Tiff. Speaking of perfectionism, right? All right. I'm just going to give you the floor a little bit just to say, I want to first lay out where you came from. So what did that look like? How did you know that those were the behaviors that were happening? And then we're going to just kind of talk about how you worked through it, how it helped you, all the things that happens on the other side of awareness.
So perfectionism for me was kind of taking, that saying that says, you can only control what you can control and you got to let the rest go. Well, I took that to the nth degree and was going to control the crap out of the stuff that I could control as much as possible, which I don't think that's what that saying really means. But if I could control it, I was going to control it, which really made everything small because the more you control something, the more you condense it, the more you make it tiny. So I was making all of that. My relationships were small. My friendships were small. My life was small because as things are bigger and they're expansive, you can't control them very well. So you keep making it smaller and smaller and more manageable so that it's perfect. And pretty soon you've got something that's maybe this big and it actually isn't that great anymore because you've kind of snuffed it out. You've smothered it a little too much. I lived a really long time in loving doing that. I thought that was a really cool thing I could do. I know.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm really good at it.
Need some help controlling this situation? Lyndi to the rescue.
Yeah. So I think, and that was, it showed up with, also planning and organizing and all of that kind of stuff and things that people those things I'm still really, really good at. But I took it as hey, you're really good at organizing and planning this and doing this. But then that's all I would do. And I found that that's all I would do in my life. I would make my checklist of, when I was going to exercise and meal planning and all of this kind of stuff. And I was so worried about it being right and that I wasn't able to be flexible. So if you asked me to do something on a day that wasn't planned in there, I couldn't do it. I couldn't move. I couldn't get anything done that day. I couldn't shift perspective. I couldn't fit it in, like nothing. I would rather just go to bed and like sleep the whole day away so that I could just start over tomorrow with a perfect day again. So it made everything very small in my life because I wasn't able to add more, do more, be more, because it didn't all fit in my box. So perfectionism was a really limiting place for me to live, and I lived there for a really long time.
That's interesting. Just because I wrote down rigid and avoidance, like how easy it would be to say you're organized and you have all of these time blocks, let's just say, in your day, right? But this one didn't fit. So that not only was your schedule rigid, but your mind was rigid. Has to be.
Mm-hmm.
Or you avoid it to start. That's super crazy. Go to bed so that tomorrow is perfect again.
Yep.
That's nuts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what did you find with your ability to do new things? Like, I mean, tell me how that even works. Does that even work?
It didn't used to.
No.
No. So, I mean, there's been lots of steps to then be able to ebb and flow. And I think one of the first steps was to actually just realize that like there's no such thing as perfect. Mm-hmm. And I think it was always an internal thing of like, this sucks. Like I've created this perfect plan, but I'm angry all the time. I'm upset when things change. I don't really like this box that I've created, even though it was organized and set, like it just felt really gross all the time. So then on top of this rigidness, I was crabby and mean all the time because I didn't like how life was. Like it felt so small, but I didn't know what else to do with it besides try to reorganize my little box. And it wasn't, I think, like working with you, I don't know how many times you pushed me outside of my box. Like just
go.
My face pushed me outside of my box, like no warning. You weren't going to hold my hand and step over the line. Like
didn't prep you on that one.
Into the mud.
Oh, that's funny.
Honestly, like that is totally what I needed. I don't know that I would have been able to just simply, come up with this process that was simple and smooth. I honestly believe learning doesn't work that way. Like learning should be hard. I always tell my kids that, like, oh, I know, I understand your math is hard. It's supposed to be because you're learning it. You don't know the answers. It's supposed to be hard and it'll get better as you learn it. So to apply that to what I learn in personal development is it's supposed to be hard in the beginning. That's why you're learning about it. That's why you're working with it. If it were easy, you wouldn't need to be focusing on it and doing it. It would already be part of your life. So that was definitely, I think, enough times of you pushing me out and me getting back up and like hopping right back in and you pushing me out and I'd run back in. Then you push me out. And I'd finally like get really, really mad about like you pushing me in the mud.
I remember we've had enough conversations about you being really mad.
Yeah.
Validating why this isn't a good idea.
But I think, that's what I needed for my perspective to shift to like, okay, wait, like I've always felt very taken care of and trust that what you do for me is in the best interest of me. Mm-hmm. And so to finally be like, okay, I'm missing something here. Why does she keep pushing me? Why? Okay, maybe, you know what? And in the beginning, it wasn't as clear. I think it was a little more like, well, fine, then I'm going to show her how this is wrong. And you were always right, but it was
by
my
the way.
Man, I thought that wrong.
She never told me I was right, by the way.
Well, that's part of like right very often.
Oh, I know. I think that's part of the transformation process is meant to be uncomfortable, but it's the balance of what easy hard is, because your perspective on a very small, rigid avoidance life is way the hell harder than you going through comfort zone catapults. And
Really.
we might not know that, but once we can tie the value of actually like being the best we can and living like you're aligned and being able to accomplish all the things that your heart wants to accomplish, the easy hard is totally relative, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like it is really hard to stay in the box
Mhm.
of life of how you just described it, which I would imagine so many people struggle with. And whatever their thing is that they're holding on to, that they're, like you said, I push you off and you face plant and you run back in and you run back, like that's why we need people in our life to say, no, it's okay. It's safer out here than it is in that box.
Absolutely.
I want you to try this over and over. But then we learn it. And once we learn it, we can't, once we see it, we can't unsee. Once we learn, we can't unlearn that. I mean, I think that's the most powerful part of growth and transformation is being able to see who you can actually be by just taking a step of courage, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember when I started to put myself in situations where I'm not going to say I knew I would fail, but high chances of failure were there and I did it anyway. And I did fail. And the more I did that and the more I put myself in uncomfortable situations, the more I realized didn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one moment, it was just, I remember sitting there and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so liberating. I can do whatever I want and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I do well at it. It doesn't matter if I fail at it because I can start over. It's always something that you can do. It went from super, super constrained to so expansive very quickly once I stopped resisting it.
Right. Do you remember how you stopped resisting it?
I think a lot of it was, having you there. Constant talks. You've always helped me find the answers inside myself. You've never told me what to do. And it's allowing me to find the answers, though, with question after question after question. I'll ask you something and you reply with a question.
Mm-hmm.
And I reply and you ask me another question. And, it's that it was a huge tool because now those are things I can do for myself when I'm in situations is I can start asking myself questions.
Right.
Why do you feel that way? Well, why do you think that's happening? What would happen if you didn't? All the questions that you would ask me every time I came to a roadblock or didn't want to do something, helping me find the layers
Mm-hmm.
of what was stopping me. And so how often do I still ask you?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I have a question. And you reply with a question. But it become a toolbox. So then if I'm stuck and I can't find the right questions to be asking myself, that's always that resource. But that was one huge tool that I continue to use is just to keep asking and find the layers. Because most of the time as you layer through the processes of why am I scared to do this? You just keep going and going. And eventually you come down to a point that either you find out there's a big thing behind it and you can start to work on that, or you whittle it down and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so stupid.
Right.
I don't need to be afraid of doing that anymore. Now I can move. I've cleared the shackles of that.
Yeah. Which is that's the powerful. You're a lifelong learner. So the thing with you is you never stopped clearing the shackles, right?
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you come up, you were a good student. You were always willing to be okay, yeah, I'm going to try this. So we're just going to see how this goes. After you tested that it was safer for you to be out of the box versus in. That's what took you the most time. It's
For
just
sure.
the mental part, right? Of believing that it's not safe in this place. This comfort zone is not good in this box.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing about what the progression of you from the beginning to now is you ask those questions without judgment of you not being able to do it, or without judgment of you being bad because you can't, or like, well, this is my pattern here.
Right.
Where do I need to go? Whereas so many times we get in like self deprecation, right? Like we're judging ourselves. We think we're stupid. We think like, oh my gosh, here we go again. And that's, although you probably had those in the beginning, and that doesn't mean that they don't seep through, you were still willing to say like, shut up, like stop talking, ego.
Mhm. Yep.
I know you're trying to keep me safe, but I'm going this direction and I'm going to be better because of it. Like,
Yep.
whereas I
Yeah.
think so many times when we have emotional release or we have mental release or we move out of our comfort zone, we judge where we were and then we try to figure out where we're going, aka we judge where we're going. So like in all this judgment, you can't even even know, you don't even know what you're after anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say too that like when I kind of started all this process of stuff, I would spend a lot of time there. And that was just another layer of procrastination and being afraid and all of that kind of stuff. So, you experience this emotion that comes up, and so you're like, okay, I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to spend an entire year doing it.
Right.
Because really, it's just that fear of what's next or not knowing what's going to come after you release that. So I think a lot of times that I fooled myself into thinking that I was actually working on the problem when I wasn't. I was allowing myself to just spin in circles.
That brings up your word processing. I just wrote it down. So this is what you would say. I'm still processing this. Just give me a little bit of time. I got to spend some time processing why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's when I was like, no, you process 24 hours a freaking day. You just think about it. Like that's what perfectionist, that's the imbalance of getting to that perfectionism, right? Is like we are already over processing and over analyzing, and we're so stuck in our left brain that we can't even feel or think about how we feel because it's so in the negative processing. So that's one thing I would say is the sign that you're struggling getting out of your comfort zone or struggling being imperfect is when you feel like you need to process. How many times I tell you like you don't need to process this, it, you have it, so let's just like jump over the freaking boulder and get through it instead of wonder and analyze how you're going to actually get around that.
Yeah.
And I think of that in results. I mean, whether who we work with in chiropractic or if it's coaching, how quick things can actually be when you just give permission and you just do it. Because I can see things from an objective point of view. You're subjective, right? So I can see, if we just go do this, you're going to be through it in 10 minutes versus processing for the next 12 years. 12 months. I bet 12 months. I meant a year. Well, sometimes it probably felt like years, but
Well, and I think along with that, like you have to acknowledge your emotions as you go through stuff. But as you said earlier, you also have to be able to step back from it sometimes and to just look at it. I remember some conversations too, where you'd be like, why are you getting so upset? Like, no, like just answer the question. You don't need to be all worked up about it. And so learning to realize like when I felt emotions, if it was an emotion that actually was something that I needed to address and determine what action I needed to take from that, or if it was an emotion that was just creating a mental barrier for me and I needed to just dismiss it and tell it to leave, that it wasn't necessary, that I was safe. Right. I didn't need it there to protect me. It was okay and it could go away. So helping me find the difference in what those emotions are, which emotions are there to protect you. And sometimes you need that, but sometimes they're a protection that you've asked your body to help create in a fear So knowing when that pops up, when to dismiss those, thank it for showing up. Hey, thanks. All right, I'm good though. I don't need you. I'm safe right now.
Right.
Versus like, oh gosh, you're right. I need to stop and pause and address this. There is something else here going on. So being able to help navigate what those feelings are when they show up. Because usually when an emotion shows up, it doesn't always just mean one thing the same time all the time. So learning to listen to your body and what those feelings are.
So how do you discern? Like, I think one challenge I hear a lot actually is like, well, I don't know. I don't know what that emotion means because that body is so stuck in fight or flight. You can't think at all except on high alert. And as we know, fear, doubt, worry has a much stronger emotional resonance than joy in the moment of fight or flight, right? So you will not feel joy when you feel fear. That's the biggest thing. So how do you filter that through? How do you know what's good and what's there to support you and what's there to self-sabotage you?
I think internally we all really know. And sometimes though that's really hard to listen to for sure. I think some of the tools I used in the beginning, like, well, one was having somebody like you for a sounding board to be like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do this. And to have somebody who can just be like, oh my gosh, really shut up, go do it. Like, because obviously if there's a real fear there and to have somebody to talk through, I love journaling. So journaling a lot of those things, again, that kind of helps whittle it down if there's a really an emotion there that needs to be addressed or not. And I think all of that just takes constant practice and doing.
Yeah.
So the more that you can talk it out or talk in your car to nobody, like just talk out loud to yourself, journal it down. Like, and because of my procrastination tendencies, I give myself a time limit also. All right, you are going to journal for 10 minutes. When you are done, you have to make a choice. Like there has to be not just like, well, I journaled, but I wasn't quite sure where I got to. Like, nope, sorry, time's up. Because the more I found for me that I could challenge my mind to move quickly, actually, the less I could think of it in a conscious thought and more of the subconscious and all the icky would come out faster because I wasn't trying to analyze it because it was timed. I only got 10 minutes. I got to get out as much as I can. Doesn't matter what it looks like or what it says or how gross it is. Like, because I have to be able to get through this as fast as I can to make a decision. And I think in the beginning too, sometimes it was just to choose to override that fear just to see what would happen.
Right.
So then that way, sometimes it'd be like, oh crap, should have listened. That was one of the ones I should have listened to and I didn't. And other times it didn't. But the more you just like make a choice, the best choice you can make in that moment, it all just adds up as part of the learning process. So now things come way quicker because I've had lots of experience sorting it out. Right. So I don't even need 10 minutes to journal it. I need usually 1 minute to just ask myself a few questions and then I can move. Because I understand how it feels different now. I would say the more you practice it, the more and more you do that. Also, the more you understand that if it's a fear, if it's an anger, it actually feels different in your body based on which direction you should go. So to pay attention to some of that. And in the beginning, you won't notice the difference at all. So don't go looking for that if it's all if it's all new, but that will come. Just as you continue to just keep moving through and just make a choice and move.
I love that because I take all of these things that we talk about with living a life that you really dream of requires to train your mind, right? Like, I mean, and before you can get a result, you have to be something different. And if we know that 95 to 98% of our subconscious or our mind is actually subconscious and that's already created, you got to train that thing to act different. All it knows is 40 years of being the same and doing the same thing with the same triggers. So I love that because people are looking for like okay, how do you do it? It's just not how it works. It takes a commitment to being better and really like, I don't know, that trust and faith that you are supported in all situations, so that failure doesn't ever mean that you're not good enough, you didn't do it right. Like, how many times do we talk about it's not about being right or wrong or failing, it's just about feedback. So when you feel like you failed, that's just feedback. It's information to take into the next experience and be like, well, this is how this last one does, and the persistence to never stop until you know what your body's trying to tell you, and you continue to make those decisions that are aligned, right?
Absolutely. I play this game with my kids, and there's no right or wrong answer to this game. It's something I just totally made up. But it is about trusting instinct and gut. And it's not about trusting your instinct and gut in making like big decisions. So I will ask them questions like red or green, and they have to answer it as quickly as possible. There's obviously there's no right or wrong answer.
Right.
I just want them to respond as quickly as possible. When I say red or green, what word comes to mind? The red or the green? Dog or cat? Sun or moon? Like, we just keep going. I just keep shooting off either ors. They don't even have to be pairs. You can say, table or cat. Doesn't matter. Like, right. I shoot off two things, and they have to just respond as quickly as possible with one answer. Because to me, that's also kind of a way to just start to trust whatever pops into your head.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's a game we play, but there's no right or wrong answer. There's no point to it besides trusting whatever pops into your mind. And that's a lot of too, when you feel those feelings, to trust whatever's right there immediately versus what trickles in afterwards. Mm-hmm. So usually your immediate response is the right answer. So when we're like, oh my gosh, yes, I should do that. And then you go into, oh, but nope, wrong answer. Right. You were right in the beginning to trust that first instinct versus how are we going to do it? How are we going to pay for that? How is that all going to fit in our schedule? That's how we talk ourselves out of stuff. That's how we find out. We create fears around how that's going to look. So that's how I practice with my kids, is to just trust that very first thing that pops into your head when you hear something.
I love that. That doesn't allow the clutter to enter, right?
Yep. And if they pause, I'm like, nope. That's the only time they're wrong. If they're like, I'm like, nope, you're wrong. There's no pause. There's no in this game. You have to give me an answer as fast as you possibly can.
Yeah. You just look through all the decisions we make in a day. I mean, we have over 6,000 thoughts. So we know how many decisions we make, and how many times do we seek external validation, or do we question ourselves, or do we just not decide and wait till later? And like, all of a sudden we have all this clutter. So then we for sure can't feel that instinct, right? We can't, that's not the first thing that comes up, because the fear, doubt, worry will always trump it.
Right.
Good stuff. This is good stuff. Like, there's a lot of action items for the people who need some action items. Okay. Do you want to part with any words for people to get out of their own way and go do the thing they need to do?
Well, I want to say thanks to you, because I know there's no way I would be where I am without you. I didn't have anybody in my life who was willing to just even expect more out of me, to see the potential that I couldn't see not long before I did. So I appreciate that so much, because my life has grown into something that I am very proud of. And a lot of that is due to the leading and coaching and partnership that I've had with you. So thank you very much for that.
Welcome.
And yeah. So to anybody else out there who needs a serious kick in the rump, your girl.
I get folks too.
Yeah, she does.
Oh.
That's one thing you've always been good at, I think, as a leader, is you are the type who can give feedback and direction and also celebrate. Like, both of those things are very important. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all for now. I think we need to do this every month. I just, because you are a wealth of experience, and I mean a wealth of knowledge, but I actually say experience in a very real way because you've done it and you've trusted it. And now just in your work, you get to see it. Like you get to continue to give that, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, whoever our coach and mentor and partner in life is, we just, once we can take that and we learn that and we are that, we become that for someone else. And now you become that light, or that person that can see this person's spark, but they can't see it. So now you can give the objective advice or perspective to say, hey, have you thought about this? I mean, that's the power of transformation. Like, we say it all the time, at least in the office, Healing Touch office, is like, man, you transform one person and they have transformed how many countless people, because once you work with one person, you work with their family and everybody that they touch. So
For sure.
it's like that gift that keeps on giving when people are willing to step into that and know that they're meant for much greater things. So for anybody who sees this or hears this on the podcast, just give us your questions and anything that you need, anything that was like an aha. I think it's really important to come from a perspective of possibility, opportunity, and growth. And when we come from that, from a mindset standpoint, then you can watch your world totally open up. For those that are watching, making a decision on the Unleashed group program, just remember that the price ends at midnight today. The bonuses end at midnight, and everything shifts over into the next cycle in January. So if you're wondering, if you're questioning, leave a message here, DM us, whatever you need. I think there's a lot of this is just breaking our patterns, our old patterns, yet always being connected as to what is actually possible for you, and never, ever losing sight of the dream, because the dream is what keeps us going. The possibility of who we can become and who we are, and now how much we can impact other people, is really what we're supposed to be doing. And finding the partner, finding the coach, finding the mentor, finding the person that can help you get there is, in my opinion, the most important part, because that's what's gotten me here. That's what's gotten me able to help Lyndi and to help all the people that we get to help every day too, is always people challenging me to be better in every single aspect of my life. So let us know if you have any questions, and that's all for now. Eh? Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening and following the Align Life podcast with Dr. Tiffany. If you love this and can think of anyone who needs to hear about it, would you mind sharing with them? Find me online at drtiffanyjohnson.com, where you can find out more about my memberships, courses, mentoring, and any upcoming events. To learn more about chiropractic for you and your family, go to htchiro.com and follow our social pages. I can't wait to connect with you soon, and until then, be you, be aligned.